Hi, this is Jessica Sligter from Nuts and Bolts. I wanted to take a look with you at what you encounter when you start working with the DAW Reaper. As has come up in some of our podcast episodes, a DAW is a digital audio workstation. That means it's a program where you can record audio into it, edit or manipulate that audio, and export it to an MP3 or a WAV file, for example, so that you can just listen to it. As you can see over here, it says evaluation license. And the way that it works with Reaper, you can purchase it if you want. It says that Reaper is not free, but actually you can continue to evaluate until eternity. So I'm just going to click still evaluating, and then we can just use it for free, which is pretty nifty. And that's not to disrespect the work that they put into it, but I'm now talking to some folks who might not have the money to buy Reaper or Ableton or Pro Tools when they're starting out. So here we are in a new project in Reaper. This whole section over here is called the arrangement window. It has some basic controls in the upper left. It has a timeline here. This is also part of the timeline. And that section and this section is where tracks appear when you make them. If you press Command T, we get an audio track. Into this track, we can record audio. In it, we can splice it and move it, and we can layer several tracks. That's just Command T, and make a lovely arrangement with it. Down here, we have what's called the transport bar. That just gives us basic controls. Go to start of project, end of project, record, play, toggle repeat or loop, stop, pause. And here we see the same numbers as we have here on the timeline. What are these numbers? So on the top, we have the bars and beat indication, and on the bottom, well, I cannot select that. On the bottom, we have the minutes and seconds selection. So if we go back here to the transport bar and we go to the right, we see here BPM, and we see here the time signature. So this project is in 4/4 time signature, meaning 4 quarter notes per bar. I'm not going to go into explaining what that means, but suffice it to say that when we go back over here and we know that the top numbers are the bar numbers, I'm just going to scroll upwards, which makes this time expand, and then we see that we have here 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, and then we skip to 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, 2.4, and then we skip to 3. So we see that the second number is the amount of beats in the bar, because we have 4 beats in a bar. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we go to the second bar. So we see that the first number is the bar number. So if we make beat-based music, this is very practical. So underneath we have these minutes and seconds indicators. And if we go back down here in the transport window, we see here tap or BPM, that's beats per minute. That's how we designate the tempo. And in this case, it's on the default, which is 120 beats per minute, which means 2 beats per second. A bar of 4 beats then takes 2 seconds. As we can see here at the end of the first bar, 1, 2, 3, 4, the time here is 2 seconds. And in the middle of the first bar, so we've had 1, 2 beats, then 1 second has passed. In any case, here in the transport bar, we also have selection indicated, which is indicated in bars and beats. So if I select the entire first bar like this, I just press the cursor and drag like that, then we see the selection goes from the start, the first beat of the first bar, and ends at the first beat of the second bar. And we see that how much I have selected is 1 whole bar. So we can also change that into minutes and seconds. So here we have 3 seconds. If I select from 1 second to 3 seconds, we have 1 second here, 3 seconds here, and I've made a selection that lasts 2 seconds. Then we also see that here we only have the bars and minutes. That is, if you select here only the bars and the beats, actually we also have the seconds. I'm going to go back to the default there. With double click, I make my cursor go back to the start, and I'm just going to go and look with you at these controls up here. And for that to be a little easier to look at, I'm going to take away these tracks, select and delete. And we're not going to look at everything in depth because this is a basics tutorial and not everything is likely to be applicable to you at first usage. But these are some basics over here. New project. Oops, no. Here we have open project. And you also see that the shortcut is mentioned when you put your cursor on it. That's very nice. Here we have save project, information about project settings, undo, redo, and here we have the metronome. So that can be handy. Automatic crossfades enabled, so when you select or overlap 2 files, it will automatically crossfade. Here we have item grouping. I'm not going to go into that, nor into ripple editing. Envelope points move with media items. It means that, you know, if you've done some automation and then you move the audio file that the automation is within, that automation moves with the audio file, because that can happen sometimes in a DAW, and it's super annoying that the automation stays where it was whilst you've moved away the audio file. Obviously, you know, in most cases, but not always, but in most cases, you're going to want those things to be coupled together. So in default, this is selected. The grid lines are enabled. Here you see those are the lines that make it easy to see in all the tracks that you might be having down here what are your bar lines or your 2-second lines in this case with the minutes and seconds. And then we have snap enabled. That's particularly handy if you're making beat-based music, if you're working with the bars and beats. You know, well, you can see it if I select something here. If I put my cursor over here in the middle of the first bar and I click to make a selection, it actually starts the selection on the 1.1, on the first beat of the first bar, instead of where I have my cursor here in the middle it won't let me do it. Let's see if I unselect this. So now, yeah, look at that. I can go in the middle there. And the same goes with moving a sound file, that if we have snap disabled, then we can go in between our bar lines, which can be very necessary at times. But let's put it back on the snap enabled for now, the default. So Command T, we have some tracks here again. And now there's also a window where we can see these tracks as well as our master track. So if you press Command M, here pops up the mixer. As you can see, there's a tab, it says mixer. And here you can see that it's lighting up in correspondence to what I'm doing up here. Here are those two tracks, or more tracks if you have them, etc. But this one here is the master track. So that's the final stereo track that all, whatever you're doing over here and over here, it finally gets channeled through a stereo left and right master track. And you have controls on there that you also see on your individual tracks here. And there's one last level to this. If we undock this from the Docker, that was a right click to get into that menu, and then we undocked it, then you have the same mixer but separately. So this may or may not be handy for you, but over here we have more space where we can insert effects. Click and the effects menu comes up. All these effects are integral to Reaper. And over here we have sends and outputs. So you see that the master is routed to the usual output 1 and 2, or left and right. But this is also used by people to make auxes. So to, for example, make a separate channel over here where we put a certain reverb on it in a certain setting that we want to apply on all of these 5 tracks similarly, and then we can route that one reverb channel to each of these channels using the output section here. But that's all for like later tutorials. Just to finish the basics here, let's look at the controls on these individual tracks. And I'm just gonna put this one back in the dock. And the dock, by the way, you can appear and disappear with Alt-D. Ding, 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 Alt-D. That's on a Mac anyway. And horizontally, you can zoom in and out with your cursor going up and down. And using your fingers on the trackpad, going apart and more close to each other, you can zoom in and out vertically. For this purpose, I'm just going to put in a track here. So I'm just dragging the audio in. It's very easy. This is just one of my tracks because it's available. It's easy. Just to show you real quick some of these controls in Reaper tracks. So let's let's start here. We have the mute and the solo buttons. So mute means just to make the track silent. So now we hear it, now we don't. Now we hear it, now we don't. It's that simple. And then let's say I'm just gonna press S and splice this so that we can do a little bit of fun layering. So I put the cursor here and press S, and then I select and drag just to make a point. S and drag. So now this is going to sound really chaotic, right, all together. But we can do like this, and then we only hear this final track. But that seems a little bit complicated if you have, many tracks. So what they have instead is the solo button, the S. So we can do like this. And then we hear only this one. Or if we want to add one other track, we can just also solo that one. So that's how that works. So here we have the record arm disarm button. So you need to select which tracks you want to record with before you can record something. You cannot just now go down here and press record. Then it says, hey, that's not going to work. So we're going to say, okay, I want to record on this track and on that track. I want to record from over here. And then I can either press this button or instead, while these are armed, I can press Command R and it starts to record. I have no audio signal coming in right now, but nevertheless, it's recording. So that's how that works. And here we have a volume button, but that also is present over here. So as you can see, because I have the two connected now, they are also grouped together, and both faders move when I'm moving one of them. But this is a much handier volume button than this little squiggly thing. So that's why the mixer window is quite handy. But a lot of those, most of those controls are present at both sites. So the mixer window, again, that's Command M. And so we also have some of the more advanced features here. We have phasing, we have routing, we have our inputs and effects inputs, and we have our automation, which will be for a future tutorial, and our effects. You just click on it, and there we have again this effect selection window. And yeah, I think that's about it for the basics for now, and I hope that this can enable you to get going, and let us know if you have questions of what you would like to have added for the basics here. Thanks for now. Bye bye. Go to patreon.com/notsomebolts
and thanks for your support.